Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are cracking open what is literally the ultimate historical cold case, the collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization. I mean, just imagine a society that boasted the absolute most advanced, meticulously planned urban systems of its time, suddenly just vanishing from the heights of its glory around 1900 BCE. How on earth does that happen? Was it some sudden apocalyptic disaster, or maybe a slow, agonizing decay? Historians have spent decades, literally decades, piecing together clues from the ruins. So today, we're going to put on our detective hats and dig into the most prominent, scientifically grounded theories out there.
So what actually wiped out the ancient world's most advanced civilization? Let's look at the evidence left behind at the crime scene, so to speak. Because, when you have an empire stretching across vast territories, complete with advanced plumbing, grid-planned streets, and booming trade, you don't just disappear overnight without leaving a trace, or do you? To figure out what really went down, we need to look straight at the physical evidence, the dirt, the bones, the bricks.
We are treating this exactly like a crime scene investigation. And here is our lineup of suspects. We've got the invasion myth, the great floods, shifting rivers and drought, ecological collapse, and finally, administrative breakdown. All right, let's kick things off with suspect number 1, the invasion myth.
Let's start with the most famous and now heavily disputed suspect, an external attack known as the Aryan Invasion theory. For the longest time, this was basically the gospel taught in history books. Early historians, especially Sir Mortimer Wheeler, were totally convinced the Harappans were violently massacred. He pointed to ancient textual references in the Rig Veda, specifically the word Purandar, which means destroyer of forts. But his real smoking gun? 36 human skeletons found scattered in the streets in the topmost layer of Mohenjo-Daro. To Wheeler, those skeletons, which looked like they had battle wounds, were absolute proof of a brutal invasion.
But wow, did modern science totally flip the script on this one? Enter scholar K.A.R. Kennedy, whose brilliant forensic analysis just completely debunked Wheeler's claims. Kennedy proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that those 36 skeletons didn't die from sword or battle wounds at all. Those marks on the bones, they were actually lesions caused by an epidemic disease, specifically malaria. So the academic world has pretty much tossed the invasion theory out the window. Suspect number 1 definitely has a solid alibi.
With murder officially off the table, let's look at suspect number 2, the Great Floods.
So, if it wasn't an invading army, what about Mother Nature? Take a look at this massive number right here, 7. During his excavations at Mohenjo-Daro, John Marshall discovered something absolutely wild. The city wasn't just flooded once, it was buried under at least 7 distinct layers of river silt. 7. That means this incredible city was repeatedly drowned by catastrophic floods. The people were forced to rebuild over and over and over again until they just couldn't do it anymore.
And how does a flood that massive even happen? Geologists Robert Raikes and George Dales figured it out, and it's pretty terrifying. It wasn't just a heavy monsoon. Tectonic shifts deep underground caused the land near the mouth of the Indus River to literally rise up. This geological uplift created a colossal natural dam. So the river's path is blocked, the water forcefully backs up, and boom, it eventually drowns major cities under feet of thick mud and water.
But the story doesn't end there. Next up is suspect number 3, shifting rivers and drought.
Here's where the plot really thickens. Because while some cities were drowning, we have clear evidence that others actually died of thirst. You have to remember, this civilization spanned multiple microclimates. A huge chunk of it thrived along the ancient Ghaggar-Hakra river system, not just the Indus. Scholars pointed out that rivers are fickle. If a river shifts its course away from your settlement by even a few miles, well, your ancient agricultural system totally fails. Bustling cities are suddenly left completely stranded.
And actually, it gets even worse. Researchers found that a massive shift in climate led to extreme aridity. The mighty Ghaggar-Hakra River didn't just shift, it completely dried up into nothing. Imagine waking up and your entire region's water supply is literally just gone. Wealthy, thriving hubs like Kalibanga and Banavwali had no choice. The people packed up and these places turned into absolute ghost towns.
Let's move on to our final 2 suspects. Number 4 and number 5, ecology and administrative breakdown.
We've looked at natural disasters, but what if this highly advanced civilization actually sabotaged itself? Modern historians find the ecological imbalance theory incredibly compelling. Walter Farasavis calculated that the population boom in Harappan cities vastly outgrew what the local land could handle. Think about it. To build those magnificent cities, they needed baked bricks. To bake millions of bricks, they ruthlessly chopped down forests for fuel.
In a totally bitter twist of irony, building their advanced cities destroyed the exact environment they needed to survive. The deforestation ruined rainfall patterns, destroyed soil fertility, and broke the local ecology.
And compounding that ecological nightmare was a total internal systemic failure. When you look at the archaeological layers from the late Harappan phase, that legendary perfect town planning, it completely vanishes. You suddenly see streets being encroached upon, those famous drainage systems becoming super weak and disorganized, and houses haphazardly thrown together with old recycled bricks. The physical evidence practically screams that centralized control had completely unraveled. The society was quite literally breaking down from the inside out.
All right, the moment of truth. Let's look at the verdict, a gradual transition.
After sifting through all this crazy evidence, from disease-ridden bones to tectonic dams and ecological overreach, modern historians generally agree on one thing: there was no single overnight apocalypse. As you can see right here in this table, different regions suffered completely different fates. It was a gradual, agonizing decline. Mohenjo-Daro gets hit by tectonic floods, while Kalibangan gets wiped out by a dried-up river. An empire this huge didn't die from a single fatal blow. It died from 1,000 regional cuts.
Which leads us to perhaps the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. The Harappan civilization didn't just vanish into thin air. There was no absolute destruction. It was a transition. As those grand urban megacities became unlivable, the populations simply migrated. They decentralized, shifting into a quieter, more rural culture. And that quiet transition is exactly what set the stage for the next great era of history, the Vedic period. They didn't disappear, they adapted.
We've laid out a ton of historical evidence today, going through decades of incredible archaeological detective work. But I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. Out of all these suspects, the repeated tectonic floods, the drying rivers, the internal ecological collapse, which one do you think truly pushed this ancient empire over the edge? The clues are still out there in the dirt, waiting for us to understand them fully. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for exploring this cold case with me today.